music just changed around here, buddy. You're looking at it.
Oh, we always wish for money. We always wish for fame. We think we have the answers. Some things ain't ever gonna change. It doesn't matter who you are.
No, well, I guess some things will never change. Another game, another day, and another loss for our Kansas City Chiefs.
Well, not this season.
Well, right. This time in Tampa Bay, where we haven't won since Joe Montana was quarterback.
Lovely 1993. I remember it like it was yesterday.
Tampa Bay had an old, they still played in the old sombrero back then. Wow, that's been a while. Wow, another abysmal performance by the Kansas City Chiefs today. The Brady Quinn era started without much of a whimper. I guess you could say it was kind of a flatlining performance.
Rich Gannon thinks the Brady Quinn era is over. He thinks Matt Castle will take the bye week, get healthy, and he'll be right back in there under center. So,
God, that sounds great. Man, do we need a bye week now more than ever? I think Danny Klingscale said the bye week is opened as a 6.5-point favorite over our Kansas City Chiefs. So,
yeah, well, I think we need 10 more bye weeks after this.
Well, they probably will be as we head into the second half of the season. But just an abysmal 38-10 loss. Tampa Bay had been just really anemic on offense and had not been able to get much going. Josh Freeman comes out of his shell today, throws for over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. The Chiefs secondary just looked lost. Stanford Rout, what is he doing?
Rout and Flowers are good corners. Barry and Lewis are good safeties. What is going on? It just looked like they couldn't deal with the bigger, athletic, physical wide receivers in Vincent Jackson and Mike Williams. I mean, Barry on that one play gave up to Mike Williams down the right sideline. He needs to keep Mike pinned against the sideline. Instead, he lets Mike Williams cut right in front of him, and Mike's just going to out-jump Barry. There's nothing he can do.
Yeah, I agree with you, and this has just been a story of the season. The Chiefs have given up 38 or more points in 4 of 6 games. We've been just obliterated off the field in all these games and all these losses, except for the Baltimore loss last week. The Chiefs are the worst team in football. It's over. They're 1-5. Cleveland won today. The Chiefs are the worst team in football going into our bye week. That's insane.
I still think it's close. I think they are the worst team in football, but we will see when the toilet bowl commences. Cleveland, Kansas City, who will get Geno Smith?
It's a must-lose game, Chiefs fans, coming up second half of the season. Chiefs and Browns, it's a must-lose game for our Kansas City Chiefs because this thing is done. Brady Quinn came in, did what he could. I think he's a guy that makes good reads, makes pretty good decisions, has a good zip on the ball, but he just isn't accurate enough. He's not a guy.
He's not a starting quarterback. Castle's not a starting quarterback. I don't think Stanzi is. Tanny's probably not from Monmouth or whatever.
Unless you've got a trash can running down the field, maybe that would.
So we're going to have to draft one of these guys and hope for the best. Maybe trade for somebody, but I mean, when you trade for somebody, you're not going to give up Aaron Rodgers or Drew Brees for a couple first-round picks.
Hi, guys. We appreciate you joining us today here on the Outsiders Podcast. We have a great show lined up. We have Tampa Bay Sideline guy, TJ Rives, will be joining us. Of course, he is the host on Fox Sports Net Radio on Saturday nights. You can catch it from 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. Going to look forward to having the Tampa Bay side of things. Of course, they come out winners today, so he's probably going to have a more positive perspective than I guess we do. But
we also have Eric Warfield, former Chiefs cornerback and Nebraska cornerback, and we have Sam Mellinger from the Kansas City Star joining us as well.
Yeah, a lot of good guests lined up, so stay tuned for that. Sam Mellinger, of course, is going to come on. We're going to ask him about this Scott Pioli situation because Adam Teicher had talked about earlier maybe in the day that there was rumors that Scott Pioli was going to be given a contract extension or that he'd been offered one by Clark Hunt and had yet to sign it. Now maybe we're hearing that's maybe not the case. So we'll ask Sam about that for sure.
Yeah, we heard Adam Teicher on Twitter just a little while ago saying, well, wait a second, maybe that's not the case. We're hearing from sources that there was no contract extension. So we'll get into that more with Sam.
Well, I'll tell you what, we're gonna start off with maybe the more positive side of the spectrum here, which is not necessarily ours, but we have Tampa Bay sideline reporter TJ Rives. All right, guys, we're going to switch to the Tampa Bay perspective of things. Of course, they come out on the winning end today. We got TJ Rives right now. He is the sideline reporter for the Tampa Bay Bucs. That's on 620 WDAE, the sports animal. Tampa Bay Bucs Network. Of course, he also hosts Fox Sports Radio Saturday nights, 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. It's kind of late, but I'll definitely stay up to listen to TJ. TJ, welcome to the show. You were in Tampa today. What in the world did you see? The Tampa Bay offense sure came alive, and boy, a good game for the Bucs.
Well, and that sums it up right there. The offense in the second half did come alive, and this turned into a runaway. And I think what I take away from this game is a lot of people here had been concerned, could this team put it together offensively? They were not great in the first half, save for the one big pass play to Mike Williams. They only had 7 points. But, boy, they gave everybody here a lot of reassurance with big plays, long drives, 31 offensive points total, 24 of those in the second half. So everybody on this Sunday night in the Tampa Bay area obviously feeling good about how the Bucs look, especially on offense, guys.
What about the Chiefs' corners? I mean, we have pretty good corners on paper, it seemed, with Barry and Route, and then we've got Brandon Flowers in Route, and then Barry and Lewis as safeties, and your big physical corners just seem to dominate today.
Yeah, the receivers for the Bucs, and Benson Jackson's a guy that you're obviously familiar with from his days with the Chargers, and he has been every bit as advertised as a $50 million plus free agent acquisition. And he draws double teams and still beats double teams. He is big, he is physical, and I think the guy that has kind of gotten lost in the last year and a half in the shuffle of losing the last 10 games and firing the coaching staff last year is Mike Williams. He's got a lot of talent. He has an incredible ability to go up and get the football and outfight defenders, and we saw that in the first half with that touchdown catch. And those two as a 1-2 punch, Kansas City had no answer for that on either end. And then you kind of factor in that Tyquan Underwood was able to make a play down the field. They were able to get the run game going some, and the Chiefs really just had no answers today. They couldn't put the pressure on Josh Freeman that they wanted to, and when their corners were having to battle against Benson Jackson and Mike Williams, they obviously lost and lost big over and over again.
TJ, this is an offense down in Tampa that had struggled to get the running game going the first few weeks of the season, and Josh Freeman had also kind of been questionable. What about today enabled Freeman and this offense to really get going, do you think?
Well, I think that there's two different ways to look at it. They played very well at times in the first couple of games. They put together long drives against Carolina, chewing up the clock. They didn't score a lot of points. In the Giants loss, they had a quick strike offense and scored 2 or 3 times quickly after turnovers and once on a bomb late in the game. The Dallas game struggled here and there in the Washington game to put points up. Today, though, they look like, especially in the second half, a complete offense where they could make the big play, but they could also put together a drive if it needed to be a 10, 12-play drive, running the ball and mixing the pass. So that's what Greg Schiano wants to do. I mean, make no mistake, he wants to run the football. They want to control the clock, and then they want to take chances down the field when there are matchups, one-on-one matchups, to go down the field. So I think if you're a Bucs fan, you're very reassured by what you saw. It's only one game, but you're very reassured by the way that offense played. And look, Freeman looked very comfortable today. You guys saw it. He had time to throw. There were some passes that I think he'd like to have back in this game. But when you're talking about 15 completions and over 300 yards, that's obviously 20 yards a whack. So he was taking advantage of every one of those big throws today.
What were the thoughts on Greg Schiano coming into the season with the poor performances of college coaches coming up to the NFL ranks? And then you've got Romeo Crennel on the other sideline, who's got 35-plus years in the NFL and just looks completely lost.
Well, it's interesting with the whole college coach dynamic because it needs to be the right situation. I mean, you go back to Jimmy Johnson, that was obviously the right situation with the Dallas Cowboys. He had a lot of control over personnel. They had a couple of pieces in place already with Michael Irvin and Troy Aikman when he got there. There have been some other college coaches that have struggled. Steve Spurrier would be a prime example of that. But then again, I mean, you look recently here in the last 3 or 4 years, Pete Carroll has done just fine in Seattle, thank you. And Jim Harbaugh last year, I know he played in the league, but Jim Harbaugh coming out of the college environment at Stanford got his team all the way to the NFC Championship game last year. So, it takes a guy that obviously has some understanding of dealing with more mature athletes, multi-million-dollar athletes to the professional level. And Greg Schiano had some experience as a secondary coach in Chicago for 3 seasons, so he has been in and around the NFL before. And, it's going to take some time. I mean, I don't think it's fair to him to judge on these first few games and probably even the first season. You got to give him a couple of seasons to show what he can do and put his program in and have his players. But hey, you got to give this tip of the hat. The Buccaneers are a much better tackling team. They are a much better defensive team with this guy and his staff there than what they were a year ago under Raheem Morris when they were arguably the worst defensive team in the league in terms of giving up points and in terms of tackling guys.
How excited is Bucs Nation down there knowing that the Chiefs are in complete disarray and just crumbling as an organization right now?
I don't know that the Bucs fan is reveling that much in Kansas City's misery. I mean, certainly, you've been there if you're a Bucs fan for a lot of years. There's been a whole lot more losing years than winning years. And, I think that the one thing I would say in Kansas City that's rather obvious is you got to resolve that quarterback situation. I said this to people after the game today, and I know it's only one game for Brady Quinn, but Brady Quinn had chances to play in Cleveland. He was on Denver's bench. He had a chance to play today. If you're a backup quarterback, this is what you're waiting on, is this kind of opportunity. And, by and large, he was bad today. Bad as the old Ghostbusters line, guys. Bad as in bad, not bad as in good. He was bad for a lot of this game. Late throwing the ball, indecisive throwing the ball. They could not get anything going. And they've got to resolve that quarterback situation and find somebody that can lead that offense. Because you got some playmakers on that offense. You just could not get them the ball today. And some of that obviously has to go to the Bucs defense and their credit, because Eric Wright, the free agent cornerback that Tampa Bay got from the Detroit Lions, did a great job on Dwayne Bowe a lot of the day. You saw the hard-hitting safety Mark Barron, the rookie out of Alabama, the first-round pick. He had an interception in the first half, a couple of big hits in the run game. So some of that was the Bucs defense, but Kansas City's got to find a trigger man. They've got to find a leader for that offense. There's too much talent on that offense for this team to be sputtering around not being able to score, guys.
Now, of course, you host the Greg Schiano Show on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers Radio Network. I want to go back into a couple weeks ago, the Tampa Bay playing at New York and Schiano's refusal to really adhere to the victory formation from the New York Giants. Do you think that this could change football, and do you believe that it's getting a positive reaction down there in Tampa and elsewhere?
Well, so much was made of that a month ago, and I think, I know Greg Schiano's sick of talking about it. I think the Buccaneer players have begun to grow weary of talking about it, and I know, you guys want to ask about it, others want to ask about it. Look, in that specific situation, it was a hard-fought, back-and-forth, fourth-quarter game where the Buccaneers had marched down the field in the final minute, down by one touchdown, 41-34, had time on the clock, had a timeout left, and fired the ball over the middle with about 15 seconds left, and it gets intercepted. And I believe at that point, Greg Schiano has talked about this, they didn't feel like the game was completely over yet, because the Giants had the ball around their own 30-yard line, where if something happens with a bad snap and you can get the football, you're going to have one more chance of throwing the end zone. And this is not something that they just pulled out of thin air, calling a timeout and standing over on the sideline. This is something they have worked on trying to physically, on that line of scrimmage, win the battle of line of scrimmage and disrupt the snap. And he's gone so far as to demonstrate that with game film at Rutgers, they did this successfully over and over again. And by successfully, I mean there were two different times in which they caused a fumble and recovered the fumble. One time it was called back because of a penalty. Another time they got the ball in the final minute doing something like this. So a lot's been made of it. And I think the Buccaneer response is they're not going to do that in just any situation. But in a situation where it's a one-score game, where you've got a chance to get the ball, it's up to both teams to decide when the game's over. It's not just the offense who gets to say, hey, it's over, we're going to kneel down. The other team has to agree kind of to go along with it and do it. And obviously, the game ended today with the Buccaneers taking a knee. But in that case, it's a four-score game, guys. Common sense there on that one. So a lot's been made, of that. It was such a hard-fought game there again with the Giants. But, I think Tampa Bay has really moved on from that. And it's something that may come up again later this year or down the road, but I don't think it's that big a deal.
Well, TJ, before we let you go, I got to ask you about a guy that refuses to quit, refuses to get old, apparently. Rondé Barber, he had a big pick six today. It was a really crazy play. But just give us your thoughts on Barber and how he's able to still perform at such a high level at his age.
He's incredible. I mean, at that position, which, again, is predicated on youth and speed, year in the National Football League and still be out there running around with guys that are 10, 12 years, 15 years in some cases younger than you in the defensive secondary. It's just it's a marvel to watch. And there he was again today, Johnny on the spot with a ball that's kind of dangling in the air about 6 inches off the ground, and he's got the eye-hand coordination to make the play and then take off and go 80 yards the other way for a touchdown. And the Bucs were pointing this out after the game, with the exception of guys that return kickoffs or punts. So stay with me on this stat. Excluding the guys on the defensive side of the ball that go back and return punts and kickoffs for touchdowns, there is no one in the history of the NFL that has more returns for touchdowns than Rondé Barber. He's now got 15 of them, 9 interceptions, 6 fumble or block punt/fumble returns, 15 total touchdowns. And again, he doesn't return punts or kickoffs for touchdowns. That is the most in NFL history for a defensive player not returning punts or kickoffs combined with his defensive touchdowns. So obviously this guy's got a knack for the big play. This guy's got a knack for the dramatic play. And he almost had another one. I know you guys saw this watching the game there in the third quarter. Had a fourth quarter. Brady Quinn was firing one in the flat. Rondé Barber was right there jumping in front of it at about the 25-yard line of the Chiefs, and that was going to be a walk-in 6 points there again. He almost had 2 today. So it's a marvel to watch Rondé Barber get out there. He's the last link to the Super Bowl team, and it's a blast to be around number 20.
Well, I'll tell you what, TJ, can't appreciate your time enough tonight. I know you got a tight schedule here on Sundays, but we'll be watching. I think Tampa Bay's a team on the rise. We're going to be watching you guys the rest of the season. Hopefully, we'll catch up to you later in the season. Maybe Tampa Bay makes a run at a playoff spot, and we'll be catching up with you then, man. Until then, we'll be listening to you on Fox Sports, and we appreciate your time today, my man.
Guys, be well. Good to be with you.
Thanks a lot.
All right, take care.
That's really good stuff from TJ Rives. Interesting perspective. And I'll tell you what, Tampa Bay's a team that I think has an identity. And they may not be a playoff team this year, but I'll tell you what, they're going in the right direction. I know that.
Oh, yeah, Greg Schiano's got a tough defense down there. And they've got a solid running game with Doug Martin, who's only going to get better with more carries and more time throughout the season. LeGarrette Blount's a tough physical runner. And then just throw the ball up to Mike Williams or Vincent Jackson. They'll go make plays for you.
And we're continuing to break down this Chiefs and Bucs game. We got Sam Mellinger from Kansas City Star. You guys can catch him, all his columns, kansascitystar.com. Sam, welcome to the show. Not such a good performance today. We've seen some colorful tweets from you. It sounds like you kind of feel about this game about like how we do, my man.
Yeah, I mean, at some point you just got to laugh, right?
we're trying.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is inexplicable to me because you go to Tampa Bay, a team struggling, pretty much similarly to how we are. How does this happen? The Bucs offense has been anemic all year until they meet the Kansas City Chiefs. What in the world happened out there today?
Yeah, I mean, it's a hot mess. I mean, it's just kind of the continuation of, basically everything that we've seen this year, with the exception of the second half in overtime against New Orleans, and really all 4 quarters against Baltimore. I think that was the best game that they played, certainly on defense. But it is a disconnected, disjointed mess. I mean, I think, I always try to be careful when I say this. You don't want to make them out to be the 85 Bears or whatever, but, they do have talent. They do have good players on this team, far too good to be headed for, my gosh, what looks like a 4-12 or 3-13. I mean, I know they play the Browns and the Colts and some teams that something, but I mean, they're too good to be playing like this. And, there's plenty of blame. There's, there's truckloads of blame that you can spread around to a lot of different people. But, certainly Romeo Crennel deserves a whole chunk of it, and so does the guy that hired him.
Well, I'll tell you what, moving forward, we're going into the bye week now, 1-5, like you said, headed towards probably a disastrous season. I mean, we've seen the rumors. We saw the tweets today about the possibility of Scott Pioli signing a 2-year extension, and then hearing, of course, maybe that's not the case. What are you hearing about that, and where do you think this team is going to head as the season progresses?
Yeah, I mean, I'm hearing what Adam Heischer had in his, in his story that posted after the game today, and Adam covers this team as closely and as hard as as really anybody. And I think he has the pulse. And I'm not going to give away his source or whatever, but it's pretty good. Or else we wouldn't run a story like that. So I don't think he was offered an extension. I also think that Jason is too good of a reporter. He's not going to just make something up. So I do think that something happened there. I don't know. It seems cloudy. It seems a bit hazy, but I absolutely 100% believe the source that Teicher had that at least no extension was offered.
You mentioned that this team has a lot of talent. So what has gone wrong? I mean, the offense turning the balls over, the receivers seem to just be letting the balls hit them in the chest and bouncing off their pads instead of catching with their hands. This defense is immensely talented as far as the linebackers and secondary go. Just what is happening out there?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I don't have the answer. You guys don't. Romeo Cornell certainly doesn't have the answer, so I don't really know. But I will say this. I think that, and there's a million different ways that you can shoot arrows at this team, right? Make fun of them, criticize them. Everything's fair game for how bad these guys are playing. But with this specific, the way that this season has gone, and where this organization, is and has been and has put its priorities, one of the most damning things about these first 6 games is that I don't. Can you tell where the leadership is? And this is a franchise. Scott Pioli's made such a point about drafting team captains and guys with character and leadership and guys that aren't going to quit and that are going to rally their teammates and all these things. And that looks like a bunch of BS, doesn't it? I mean, I don't know where. I haven't seen that on the field. These guys are giving up late touchdowns to Tampa, and I just, aside from Eric Winston's very misguided rant, against fans, I just, I don't see where there's any leadership on the team, and that's a huge indictment after with the organization's philosophy on player acquisition.
Yeah, I agree with you. We've talked about that on our podcast before about maybe we have a bunch of quiet leaders, how they say that they lead by their play, and if they're doing that, then they're not leading at all right now. And we don't have any players like Ray Lewis just firing up the team and getting them motivated to play all 60 minutes, play hard, play your heart out. So what can we do to change that around here? I mean, does the house need to be clean? Just clean house, get rid of everybody?
I mean, I've written this in the paper. I do think that they need to make some really major changes at coach, at general manager, and with the quarterback. And I think that it's a little bit simplifying it a little bit, but not too much. That if they had a good quarterback, a good quarterback can make up for a lot of other sins. If you look around the league, we tend to focus, obviously, I know you guys do on your podcast, and certainly I do writing for the newspaper in Kansas City, but, we all tend to focus so much on the Chiefs. It's easy to lose sight of the fact that every team's got issues. If you go to a Chargers message board, for instance, you're going to see a lot of people complaining and criticizing the team for not having anybody behind Jared Gaither. You know what I mean? Every team has flaws. That's the way of the NFL with the salary cap and a lot of the other ways that they do things. But if you have a good quarterback, it can make up for sins in a lot of other places. And, if you replace, I think Matt Castle has been, I've seen the numbers like on Pro Football Focus and some other places, the total QBR, whatever the heck that means from ESPN. But I think we can all agree he's one of the worst 3 or 4 quarterbacks in the NFL this season. And if you can replace that with a guy who's not 1, not 2, not 5, but, even like 10 or 12, something like that, I think a lot of these things get erased. That covers up a lot of, inadequacies in a lot of other places. So if they can do that, I don't even care if it's Scott Pioli doing it. At this point, but if they can get the right guy in the draft or trading for a quarterback would be pretty hard to imagine. But that's where it all starts, and I know that's something that a lot of us, have been beaten to death with the Chiefs
But how do we get that quarterback and head coach in here? I mean, Jeff Fisher and Peyton Manning won't take calls, won't take visits. Are we going to have, if we draft a quarterback higher, are we going to have an Eli Manning, John Elway thing where they just refuse to play here and will sit out an entire season?
I don't know about that, but I mean, I do think that. Hey, look at it this way, right? The Chiefs, as they are going right now, they are headed toward the kind of draft pick where they can get their choice of quarterback.
Yes.
Unless they refuse to play here.
Right.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see because, of course, we saw Brady Quinn, the start of the quote-unquote Brady Quinn era started today. Before we let you go, let us know what you saw out of Quinn today and if you think that going forward that if you think Quinn will be used or if we'll go back to Castle at some point.
I mean, I don't know. What is your PG rating, by the way, on this podcast?
Oh, the sky's the limit, Sam. Just
okay.
let her fly,
okay.
my man.
Okay. I mean, it's not too dirty, but to me, like the Quinn or Castle, do you want to get punched in the nuts or punched in the face? Either one is good, right? So, today, Quinn, I thought he was bad. I thought he threw the ball into the ground a few times, and the interception that cost them the field goal that would have been their first lead of the season, was into some tight coverage. That was probably a bad decision. I thought he was pretty bad. Certainly wasn't worse than most of the games that we've seen out of Matt Castle. He didn't fumble the quarterback sneak, right there at the goal line, like Castle did last week. But I don't know that anybody. Well, I'm not trying to discount anybody's opinion, but I don't understand how you can watch that game and think that Brady Quinn is either the answer or the problem. I thought he was pretty crappy, just like Matt Castle's been pretty crappy.
How much of the ineptitude on offense do you put on Brian Daboll? And I never wanted him here. I thought it was a horrible hire, no matter what the Chiefs were throwing at me. And I thought we should have gone with Al Saunders. So what part of the blame goes to Brian Daboll?
Well, I mean, certainly a lot of it, but the defense, and I was starting to get on the defense's back a little bit, after the second half where they really shut down the Saints, and what they did to a really, really, really good offense from the Ravens, and they just got shredded today. So, yeah, you can blame Brian Daboll because the offense has been awful, but again, he's not the one fumbling the quarterback sneak, and I think that he hasn't been able to make chicken salad, but that doesn't, but he's still been given chicken something else. You know what I mean?
So you're saying we need Casey printers?
Right. So it's just, I don't know. Speaking of Brian Daboll, Adam Teicher brought up a really good point, from that press conference with Romeo the other day about when the Chiefs decided to bring in Brady Quinn, Romeo didn't even ask Daboll what he thought, didn't ask his opinion.
Yeah,
which
crazy.
Would be strange on a whole bunch of different levels. Even if Brian Daboll hadn't coached Brady Quinn for 2 years after Romeo left in Cleveland, what I mean? It's just like, how do you not? What are they thinking?
Yeah, that's kind of the disconnect that people are talking about. I mean, that's another example of it. And I mean, Romeo Crennel drafted Brady Quinn, and apparently wasn't interested in the personnel being brought here to play. That is kind of odd. I'm very concerned about that as well. But it's just another thing in a laundry list of problems right now, and we're going to see as we head into the bye week where we go from here. But I'll tell you what, Sam, thanks so much for joining us today. We'll be checking you out at the Kansas City Star, and we'll look forward to keeping up from you from here. I know you got the week off, so try to forget about this, just like the Chiefs are going to try to forget about these losses, my man.
All right, I appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Hey, Sam, thanks for coming on today. We really appreciate your insight, and we'll be keeping in touch.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks, guys.
All right, take care.
And that was Sam Mellinger from the Kansas City Star. Of course, you can catch his sports columns. And I'll tell you what, he really brought it today. He was not shy when talking about the horrid play of these Kansas City Chiefs.
No, I think we caught a few expletives in there, letting those fly. I mean, it's all right. Just let your feelings known. It's frustrating and sad right now how this organization is going forward.
Well, we've had some media side of things, and I want to bring on Eric Warfield because Eric played here for several years, and it'd be interesting to see what his take is coming in on the secondary because they were the ones exposed today. And we're back breaking down Chiefs and Buccaneers today. Joined on the line, very special guest. We've got Eric Warfield here. Eric, welcome to the show, man. And don't know if you saw this game today, but wow, a lot to work on. There's not much positive to say about the team right now, is there?
No, not really. For some reason, they just can't put all the pieces together. And I know people have been talent to be in the situation that they're in right now. And I know Brady Quinn isn't, probably the guy that they were hoping for, and probably didn't play the way that they were expecting. But, this is a team effort today, and they got to figure out a way to get back on track.
It looked like the corners struggled today against the taller physical receivers in Vincent Jackson and Mike Williams. What did you see out of Flowers and route?
Well, I agree. I wasn't too big on route coming out of Oakland, but he's a pretty decent corner. And even with the pass that was caught on him, that Mike Williams actually made an awesome play by jumping over him to grab that. That wasn't a nice throw or anything. That was just all upon the receiver that made a play out of something. I think that the defense will be okay. We have some issues with Jamal Charles not being 100% healthy, but even with him being at the percentage that he is at, he's still playing really good football. He was pretty much shut out today, which meant that Brady Quinn pretty much had to step up and make plays. And like I said, he hasn't been given enough time, enough plays to go out and prove himself. And today that kind of showed.
During the broadcast, Rich Gannon kind of alluded to the fact that Jamal Charles, he didn't say that Jamal Charles was soft, but he kind of alluded to that. Do you agree in any way? And, what was Rich trying to get at, trying to allude to the fact that he was kind of a soft player?
I mean, I can't necessarily say he's soft. I mean, he's not the typical bruiser running back. But heck, I think he's in the top 3 in rushing, or maybe the number 1 in rushing for the NFL. So he's not too soft if he's that high in the category. He's not a big guy. He's a speed guy. And he reads his holes and he hits them hard and he hits them fast. So I'm not going to argue Rich's point, but I'm definitely not agreeing with it.
How does this defense give up the 31 points they gave up? They gave up 38, but one was an offensive pick 6. With all the talent we have seemingly on defense, especially in the secondary, the linebackers, how does this defense give up 31 points?
I can't seem to understand it myself. Especially with having Eric Berry come back for this season after his injury last season, Derek Johnson coming off a Pro Bowl season, Tom Bahali coming off an excellent season last year, and Flowers, who actually played pretty decent last year. I think they have a very, very talented defense. And for whatever reason, they're struggling. I can't seem to understand it. I don't know if it's Cornell that needs to, hire a defensive coordinator and just stick to head coaching, or he needs to go be the D coordinator and the Chiefs need to go and find a different head coach. I don't know what the problem is, but whatever it is, it just doesn't seem to add up to what most were expecting for this season. And they played pretty good football last year with a lot of their key players being injured and out for the season. And so having those guys come back, you would think that they would be able to fit into the scheme of things and to make it a lot better than what it was last year. But for some reason, it just hasn't worked out that way.
Is it plausible to demote Romeo Crennel to defensive coordinator and hire a new head coach? I don't think I've ever seen that done.
No, I don't think I've seen it done either, but I don't. That's a decision that he and Pioli have to make. I don't know if the guys aren't confident in him, running both scenarios of being the head coach and being the defensive coordinator, or what. But for whatever reason, they're not playing their best football. They show good signs. You go out against a pretty good Baltimore team. We ended up losing that 9-6 on a pretty good game of what showed a better team of what I think most people kind of expected to see out of the Chiefs, and yet then they come back and play Tampa, and everything is just out the window. And I don't know if that's a decision that Pioli needs to make to bring in a coordinator, or if Cornell has to swallow his pride and say, hey, you know what, maybe I'm better off at doing one or the other, and I need to bring somebody else in to either take his job as a head coach or to move into that defense coordinator spot.
Well, and that kind of leads to a bigger question, because here we are sitting at 1-5 through the bye week. the Kansas City Chiefs have not led for 1 second of action this whole season. Kicked, of course, the game-winning field goal in overtime to beat New Orleans somehow. But can this go on? Can Scott Pioli keep his job with the team performing like this? Can Romeo? I mean, do you think that at this point that it may lead more towards blowing this whole organization up?
From the blogs that I've read, from what I understand, the organization is pretty much blowing itself up. A lot of people aren't happy with Pioli, and I hate to say some of what I'm about to say, but from what I understand, since Clark Hunt's takeover, the organization is pretty much taking a completely different direction into what it used to be. A lot of the former players aren't welcome back. They don't come back unless there's some special event. I don't know, and people didn't know if that was a decision that was made between Pioli and Mr. Hunt or what, but the entire organization has completely changed. But that doesn't, go into what goes out onto the field on each Sunday. So for whatever Mr. Hunt has to do, I think he's trying to make a pretty good team, and I think a lot of people expected that, bringing in a high caliber GM such as Pioli, who came from New England with multiple Super Bowl championships. So, and for some reason, the thing just hasn't worked. I think he's brought a lot of good talent in, so don't get me wrong on that. And I'm not saying that he needs to be pushed out or his contract shouldn't be extended. But from what I hear, a lot of chatter is about the team getting rid of him.
Before we brought Scott Pioli in, a lot of people were saying how Bill Belichick and Thomas Dimitroff, now GM of the Atlanta Falcons, who was formerly with the Patriots, they said that those two were the ones making the personnel decisions and Scott Pioli was just more of a businessman. Do you think that that Clark wanted Scott because he's more of a businessman and Clark just wants to make his money?
I would hope not. Lamar Hunt really, really loves and cares for this team and his players. And bringing Carl Peters in was a great deal for the organization because that was, we had numerous sellout seasons with attendance. He ended up bringing Marty Schottenheimer in, who came in with a lot of 9-win seasons, some playoff appearances. And yet Marty just couldn't get to that big one. But I would hope that that Clark has learned a lot from his dad, and that he's trying to keep the team in that same direction. Like I said, honestly, speaking with that, I thought that Pioli was a guy within that front office at New England that was somewhat had some input into who was brought in. I was brought to the Patriots after I was released by the Chiefs, and I got to know Pioli and Belichick when I went there, and I can only speak highly of the two guys. So I can't say that it was just a Belichick deal that brought the talent in, because from my own perspective, I saw two guys that worked really well together.
Well, I'll tell you what, we'll see what happens here during the bye week. Probably going to be a lot of stuff written, a lot of stuff talked about in the media as far as where this team's headed. Eric, we appreciate having you on today, man. We got to bring you back another time for some great insight. You are the man. We appreciate it. We'll catch up with you soon, my man.
Sounds good. Thanks for the call.
Thanks, Eric. Appreciate it.
Take care.
All right. Yep.
And a big thank you to Eric Warfield, who just joined us, and to our two previous guests, TJ Rives and Sam Mellinger. All three really bringing it today.
For more perspective, check us out on Facebook, facebook.com/The Outsiders Podcast. Also on Twitter @Chiefs Outsiders. And don't forget our brand new website, theoutsiderspodcast.weebly.com.
We're heading to a bye week, guys, so relax, take a step back, watch some teams that really play well next weekend, and join us next week when we preview the Raiders.